New Year, everyone. I'm excited to be joined again with my friends Deb and Vanessa. Thank you so much for joining me today, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Yes. 2025, here we are. So today we are going to chat a bit about how, as professionals, to present ourselves authentically to our clients and how to be authentic for ourselves too, but also how to help our clients be realistic and authentic in their goals and how they reach their goals. And all of us, in one way or another, we're students as well. So I feel like we have an interesting perspective in that we are kind of responsible for presenting something, whether it's a program or presenting ourselves. But we're also on the other side of like, how do we sort out who we want to invest our time and money in? What are you guys' thoughts on this sort of thing? Authenticity. I know it's a popular word these days.
That's, for me, being authentic kind of means that I'm doing the work I'm asking others to do. I'm going through the same thing my students are going through. And I think the best way to put that out there is just to do the work and be the person and the horseman that I am trying to be. It's that example that I think can add that authenticity to the work we're doing and allow people to see that. I think that becomes really obvious to people when they see someone doing what they're saying, not just saying it.
I'm going to dive right in and poke you on that one, Dev.
Okay.
Because so I'm sure in Texas, your clients would say they see you doing the work and they see you doing Now, it's super easy to be on the other side and go, okay, well, if we're going to really impact and like really reach people, it's got to be more than just your in-person stuff, just that small circle around you, and you don't post on the interwebs. So.
This is very true. I do not.
I do not either.
yeah, me too, Vanessa. So that's just trust me, I feel the other side of it as well. But it's very easy to say, well, you're not really going to impact that many people if you just live in your little bubble and do your happy little thing. Some would say, how are you gonna reach more? What are you gonna do? You got to go on the internet. You got to do this and that. So, thoughts?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that challenge, and I admittedly am not online. It is some of it is just I don't feel like learning the ins and outs of it, and then part of it is I do have this vision of my work as being like singularly connected to the ones that I work with rather than something that casts a broad net or out there. At this point, it's not to say that that's how I always view it, but for my own personal growth over the last few years, as we've talked about in the past, like as I've kind of been on this journey, it's felt more comfortable being mano a mano in it versus trying to put something out there. There's a little more detail to that I'll get into, but counterpoint to what you have brought up is I do feel, because I have maintained a presence in the show world, my hope is that is where that broader net is getting cast. And so in going to shows, my work is now visible, right? It's not something that I'm doing just at home or just in my arenas at home where it isn't seen. It's something that is observable. If people are choosing to observe it, right? And so that I do feel like allows the work I'm doing to reach like a slightly more extended than just the singular clients I work with at home or the word of mouth that they spread.
And I absolutely do. I very much recognize and appreciate that, because it's
Yeah.
easy, as we all know. I kind of lived in a bubble for a little while and avoided all things. So
Yeah.
I definitely appreciate that. And I know in other episodes we've talked about how at this stage, you're growing, we're all growing.
Yeah.
At this stage, you're ready to try to take that competitive stuff and campaign your own horses and take that to a bigger thing. So it's certainly not to say that you're not exposing yourself and you're just sitting at home. But, I'm just going to poke at you just because.
No, because I appreciate it. And then just one more point on that, that's a little more like of a personal detail. There is like a level of humility in the work that I do that doesn't come naturally for me. So I am a very much the definition of an extroverted introvert. And so once I open up, I very much like to be the center of attention and to put on a show. And there is a part of that I feel doesn't quite mesh with the foundations of the work I'm trying to do with people and horses. And I've had to kind of figure out how to manage that part of my personality. And so part of that has been hiding it. Like, I'm not dealing with it yet until I have a stronger foothold on the work I'm doing, and then starting to kind of get more out there, just to kind of like keep tabs on that. It's very important to me that my work doesn't become about me. And that's something that I felt like I needed to kind of protect for myself a little bit until I feel more sure in the work I'm doing. So that's the other argument for but a good part of it is laziness.
I'll argue it myself, because I wouldn't say I'm posting all that much now. At this point, it's podcast clips and things for the most part. But I have at times kind of forced myself to try to post and do things that traditional way, or put together a membership, or put together a course, or whatever. In some ways, I don't know. I feel like it waters it down. It really, and that is where I struggle. Like some of the stuff with my horse Sam, he is like, it's deep. Me and Sam, and I don't post about it much because it's like, it feels like I have to give so much backstory, so much detail, all this stuff. The work that we do is that detailed and deep and long term, and so it feels like by trying to post it, maybe in some ways I'm concerned about it being taken the wrong way, and in other ways it just feels too exhausting.
Well,
how can I write all of these things? I can't, and if I do it short and quick, it's not real.
And there's not a good TDLR to it, right? Like that gets all of those nuances of it across. And I think something like that put out like as an anthology, like where you over time give that information out and the details of the story, I think like that puts it into a place that's easily digestible for people, but allows you to kind of build on the ideas just as the training and the work you've done with Sam have built over time. So I do think it's possible to kind of get that information out in that kind of way. I will say your most recent post with the that I just found really, really awesome was that idea of like getting to the honest answer of the horse. I love that. And I think that felt reading that in that moment, you were like, this is something I can share. This is something I'm experiencing. It's hitting me in a way that I can put it into words succinctly, strongly. And then you posted it.
Size enough.
Exactly. And it just was perfect.
But it felt bite-sized enough. And I think in the past, there would have been like 5 different detours of like, well, this won't make any sense if I don't explain all of this. And then I gotta But that, looking back on it was probably me feeling like I have to justify why we're not farther. Really.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. That's fair.
At the time, I think I would have said that, but looking back now, like, I probably was just justifying why we weren't doing X, Y, and Z or whatever.
Well, the way it read to me was more like here's this thing I'm experiencing with my horse. Here's this thing, and it just felt like it to me. It felt like it more. This was something that kind of popped up that you're like, I could put this out there, and then you did, and it was really impactful. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you. Now, the other side of some of this stuff, like I'm saying how, I don't like these little courses, or I don't like it being watered down, whether it's horse training or body work. I know there's all kinds of body work and massage courses. Vanessa, you can fill us in a little more on the details of that, but I know there's a lot of different modalities that are taught online. It's great that the awareness is out there, and yet sometimes it just feels kind of watered down. Thoughts?
Well, and I think it can be dangerous. And my big thing with, okay, I'll start by saying I am a dinosaur. I'm a total dinosaur. I don't post. The only reason that I have any presence is because of Tamara. And I'm
Same. Yeah, same. Yeah.
because eventually I know that is something that I'm going to have to do more of, especially if I want to be more in an educator role. But for now, I'm just out there doing the work. I have great clients. Through word of mouth and just keeping at it, I have plenty of work here in the Tucson and Phoenix and surrounding area. And so I'm very grateful and lucky in that. I also teach for the Masterson method, but they do such a good job at promoting that those classes fill, and I most of the time don't have to do kind of anything additional. But at some point, I would like to perhaps offer more training to people, and and when I get into more of that role, like my body's kind of getting tired of just lifting up legs all day, right? Then I'm going to have to venture into more of the social media world to get the word out about what I have to offer. But what I will say is that, yes, there are so many things out there, and so much of it is so good, but it gets dangerous when I think you are learning a manual therapy, but never in person. So that's always a red flag to me. You have to have some in-person training. I mean, you wouldn't go to a chiropractor, and that's on the kind of extreme end, if you will, of the different type of techniques that you can do. But you wouldn't go to a chiropractor, for instance, who has only learned how to do adjustments online, that doesn't have the hands-on training. So I do see that now more and more, classes are being offered, and it's like any manual therapy, you have to have that tactile part of the curriculum. And I just think, like, for me, as an osteopath in this bodywork world, I think people get probably really confused if they want to do something with their horse, maybe just as an owner, or maybe they want to get into a professional role as a body worker. There's so much out there. It's hard to sift through, because there is this, in my opinion, a lack of authenticity, which is just kind of innate in the nature of social media. To really say what you're capable of addressing. And so,
I would argue, real quick, that, you saying they're not being realistic about what they're capable of addressing, but I do think they believe that they are.
Yeah.
I think that's the problem. I think they authentically, I mean, it's not like I'm talking about any one person. There's a lot of people out there, and certainly outsiders could be looking at all three of us and say we're doing it right now, but like there's a lot of people out there that really do believe that they are capable. That's what makes it so challenging. They believe they're capable.
You're totally right. You're totally right. And I think for me, like in my training, I'm a Masterson practitioner and instructor. And so Jim Masterson is so very practical as a person, and so humble as a person. And so you can see physically and in a relaxation sense that the horse is benefiting from the techniques, whether their nervous system is just coming down because you're getting these great kind of releases, they're kind of going more into that parasympathetic, but then you also see some gentle range of motion where you can check the mobility of the neck at the beginning of the session, and you might see, like, the owner might see some sticky spots, and the body worker should feel that. Then you go and work on the rest of the horse. Then you come back and recheck it, and then you can see that that sticky spot is less sticky, for instance. But that's my thing. It was just drilled into us also in osteopathy school. It doesn't matter if something pops, okay? Like, things pop, fascia pops. So what you want to do is you want to go back and recheck anything that you tried to mobilize to see if you got more range of motion. And that's where I don't necessarily see in some of the other things presented out there. How do you, one, ascertain in a practical way what's going on, besides me just saying whatever, or me going, yeah, the ovary's twisted up, okay? We need to have some kind of a some kind of a way of knowing that's really what's going on. So in that case, if I'm talking about ovaries, hey, Reprovet, can you please put your hand in rectally and tell me what's going on with that left ovary? That gives me information, not just is twisted up. And I'm just using this as an example. And then I put my hands on it and go, I untwisted it. No. Can I please have the professional go back in and check and make sure that whatever now is more mobile? So, in my osteopathy training, it was about mobility, 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 and you go back and recheck, and you involve other professionals, so that's not your lane, right? Like, doing an internal on a equine is not your lane, but if you've got someone that is their lane, then you can know. But I just see so much out there that gets a little in the woo-woo world, and I'm all for woo-woo, okay? I'm all for it. However, that stuff is really hard to determine the authenticity of it. And like you said, the professional working on the horse may 110% believe in what they're saying, but to actually know what you're doing and that you've actually alleviated that is something else. And that's what I see with social media. Is it's very easy to claim that you can do and fix all of these things, but how do you know? How can you show me? And in osteopathy, the way I was trained, yeah, you can show someone, but there's a lot of stuff out there it's just kind of like the professional that's saying it is the only person that can kind of evaluate that. And then they do it in these ethereal kind of ways, and that I think can be dangerous.
I think a really great thing about the fact that we get to work with horses in this way is that, like, horses are inherently honest. So you can't really pull one over on them. Like, they give feedback. So whether it's training or body work, something being done, whether it's a modality or a training technique, a feel, something being done will create an honest reaction in the horse, or nothing if nothing happened. And I think that allows us to have an evaluation of what's happening. If we've hired a body worker to work on our horses and we've done the work ourselves to be observant of the horse and understand, like, the horse's response to things, this applies to hiring a trainer as well. Like, the horse will give us that feedback if this is a viable, or if it's done something, or if it's causing harm, or if it's just nothing. I think that's a great thing that we get to do it with horses.
Well, and I will just add on to that, like, there are a lot of wonderful things out there that as soon as you put your hands on the horse, that horse relaxes. But that's not always an indication that you got things moving, or that you got the deeper work done that's really going to help them. Like, horses can relax, and just like us, we can relax. It just means that, like, we're in this kind of threshold where our autonomic nervous system is pretty regulated, which is great. but that's not the same thing as I got that SI moving better. And so that like I think a lot of people will see different modalities and they see the horse is really relaxed. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That's a fantastic thing. But to say that I actually got a joint mobile again is different. I got to move it. And
Yep.
so that's like, and it's just too, I think like it's part of my job is to educate people about that. So I
Yep.
try to talk through what I'm doing and I try to show them. I'll check the pelvis. You know, does the pelvis go up? Does the pelvis go down? Okay, you saw that. All right, let's adjust it. Okay, now let's recheck this. Oh, wow. Yeah, that goes up now. Yes, that's what I wanted. And, you know, but sometimes I will say too, like a horse I just had today, they will get really defensive about the areas where they need the work the most. And you can just go, oh, like I'm irritating them, or, you know, I shouldn't be going there because it's really like they're really getting amped up. But me, I know enough to know, because I've been doing it long enough to know when I can keep with the horse and work through that, or it's just going to escalate into something bad. And so, like today, I just stuck with that horse. He's throwing his head, he's having a fit, and I'm just staying with him. I'm just staying with him. And then finally, you know, he let me in, and it just showed that that's where I needed to be. But someone who didn't know how to read the nuances of horses might look at that and go, oh my God, she's picking a fight with that horse. That horse doesn't like what she's doing. And it's like, no, honestly, the areas where they are the most offensive is where we need to be, but we just have to get access to that. So there's different ways to do that, you know? So just to kind of piggyback on what you're saying about horses that give input, because I think sometimes it can be a little deceptive, and that's what we're all
Yep.
trained in, trying to read that nuance of the horse.
Yeah, I think when both of you were talking, I was thinking I 100% agree, but you have to give enough time. That's the hardest part, I think.
Yeah.
It's not, you cannot. Well, maybe sometimes you can, but like when Vanessa's there, can we have one session where I see an SI not moving and then now it's moving? Yes, that does happen. But most of the time, whether it's training or the body work, we have to get beyond step 1 and 2 to know anything. Which is challenging. It's challenging sometimes to commit to a process when you are trying to figure out if it's your process, but it's the only way to know. You know, it's not fair. You know, step 1 and 2, even if this is theoretical, of course. I know we don't all just have a basic step 1 and 2, but in theory, like step 1 and 2, even if they are the most important ones, if you don't ever invest the time to get to step 3, 4, and 5, you don't really have context to judge. You know what I mean?
I totally get that. And I think like a confounding factor in all this is like sometimes feedback's not immediate. I do think horses are always honest, but I do think still like there can be trauma or experience or physical pain or something that can keep that feedback from being immediate. And then if we move past the thing we're doing, we'll never get that feedback. And so like I think that idea of having time be a part of our practice is really important, because like we have to make sure something has enough time to see if that feedback comes through. Yeah, so it's, which just adds another complicating factor to it.
Right. Well, and it's like you were describing it, and I would describe it just a little different in that we did get feedback. It just, we didn't like it.
Okay.
We got.
Yep.
But like Vanessa's describing, and I know this happens in training, I'm sure you would say the same thing. We didn't like the feedback we got, but if we hung in there, we finally got
there's something on the other side of it.
Exactly what we
totally
do.
Well, and just from like a body work or more of an osteopathic perspective, like how many times have we like worked on your horse's Tamara, and they just have to be reset, you know, on some kind of a frequency, right? Like maybe 3 months or 6 months or whatever, because there's other things going on that are going to cause that SI to get immobilized again. And just to your point, like, that's where time and working and continuing to work with that animal is going to be the only thing that helps you kind of investigate. They can't tell you what's going on, and so it's like, we're not mind readers, or maybe we are.
Right.
Some people are. Anyway,
Yeah.
but
I mean, I'm a horse whisperer.
Yeah.
that's what you do. Step into that.
I'm a horse yeller.
I'm a horse irritator.
Well, it depends on if it's introverted Dev or extroverted.
That's right. It can. Yeah, it is. Yeah, sometimes I don't have control. But yeah, that's interesting. Like that idea of because everything you were saying, Vanessa, I just was like, yep, horse training. It's all the same. Like, the thing that is the loudest is actually the most interesting most of the time, and the thing the horse is saying. Like, so if there's a behavior that we're looking into that we're like, well, we really wouldn't like this behavior, is there a way we could redirect this? Like, yeah, the louder it gets, kind of tells you you're onto something. Like, it guides you to where you need to be working. So I love that. I was thinking about, like, going back to, like, finding people to learn from. I really, like, there are 3 words that, like, I will trust someone implicitly, and that's, I don't know. Like, if someone can say that, it's like, all right, I'm sold. I'm in.
That makes me say that. I was having a conversation with my trimmer about this, because I want him to do a podcast, but we'll get there. But we were having this conversation, and I was like, I want to talk about, how does someone decide, let's say they need to find a new trimmer. How do they decide, based on having a conversation with someone, if that's what they use? Because I feel like they all say very close to the same things. And he was like, shoot, I don't know. And then he said, that's the answer, actually.
Yeah.
Like,
I love it. Yeah.
If they don't know,
Yeah.
they're probably perfect.
Yeah.
Heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Because this ties in, I think. Basically, people that actually do know the most aren't going to be a self-proclaimed expert. You're going to say, I don't know.
Yes. Anyway.
It's a legit thing.
It's legit. Look it up.
It's legit. Look at it.
If you've never heard of it, well,
Yeah.
I want to Google it.
It's like Dunning-Kruger effect. I don't know.
That's funny. That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, that's how you tell if someone's authentic, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think what I keep getting, I'm not going to say stuck on, what I think is true, which is frustrating, and I don't have any way to make this not frustrating, is it comes down to time.
Mm-hmm.
So many people are not willing to give enough time to any one thing.
Yeah. And then they move on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the same time, having been on the other side of it, there have been things that I've done for a certain amount of time, and then when you move on, you're like, dang, why did I do that for so long?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the hard part.
Yeah.
Definitely the hard part about that. Perhaps, I guess, it's just seeking, it's time plus, it's going to be a bad one, I don't know. I was going to say time plus checking in with other professionals, but that immediately makes me think of those, we all know them, the clinic hoppers or the bodywork hoppers or the whatever, but they're kind of leaving one ship to jump to another.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if, like, a part of that is not really having a clear idea of what you're looking for sometimes too. Like, you might have this ill-defined vibe that you want, or like this feeling that you're looking for, or like, I want my horse to feel this way when I'm around it, kind of thing. Those words, right? Those statements. But what does that actually mean, and how does that actually manifest? Like, so in, like, when you're working with your horse, what would that look like? Like, I want my horse to want to be around me and learn with me. Okay, what does that look like? What is the horse doing that exhibits that? And I think that gets ill-defined. And so when someone's like evaluating whether something helped them or not, or like if a body work session helped them or not, they don't actually have the things to look at to say, okay, did this change? Like you were saying with the body, do we have more mobility in this? Are the ovaries untied now? There's no way to like look at it, and I think that there's an element of observation to that too. Is that I think we all, like in our horsemanship and in our bodywork practices, like have an element of learning to observe something as it is for what it truly is. And I think that's a practice. I don't think we start off really great at that, but over time we get better.
And I also think that many people, I myself included, if I am not careful, rely on professionals so that they don't have to observe.
Yeah.
You know, where really it's like you need to use professionals, get help, get
Yeah.
the outside eyes, and keep critically observing and learning
Yeah.
yourself. I say it all the time when I'm taking lessons. Gosh, it's so much easier to just mindlessly ride and listen to you. That's so great. It's easy to just do that.
Yeah.
It is a lot easier to just trust your trainer and trust your body worker and be done with it. Rather than really be looking in and kind of being that annoying client in a way.
Yeah.
Like, well, I don't really see what happened there. I don't really see it, I think that's where the best stuff happens. It just isn't all that common to be in a space where you can. And I mean, as a professional, I can say there's not that many other professionals that you have to have a relationship with someone to be able to really say like, I hear what you said and it's not, I don't believe you, but I don't see it.
Yeah, I don't see it. Yeah. And I think like a tricky part to that is like, it's actually kind of easy to make someone think they see it. And and I think like it's easy also to accidentally do that as a trainer and instructor. Like not intentionally.
It's almost always accidental.
Yeah.
Delusional, call it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they're always believing themselves, kind of like at the beginning. Like it's not usually someone like, oh, I'm gonna trick them now. Like I don't think hardly anybody's doing that. They believe themselves,
Yeah. And I think like, but again, from the standpoint of looking for an educator, I think someone that's willing to backtrack on something, or willing to be like, oh, hold on, I missed that. Or I just think that usually indicates at least an integrity to it, where we're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to do the wrong thing at times. But like the person that can go back and find where they made that mistake and move forward from there, I think is a really huge thing. Just like we would do with the horses. Oh, I instilled this back then. I need to go back to that. And let's maybe see if we could change that.
Well, and having like adaptability, is kind of like when you say that, what I hear, and humility, adaptability and humility. And I love talking about, you guys are talking about observing the horse. And I just think of Jim Masterson, because he's so funny. He's like, well, I'm just really lazy, and I just observe the horse. Like when I put my hand here, the horse does this. And it's actually brilliant, though. Like this beautiful bodywork program that, if you can't tell, I highly recommend. Anybody listening is wanting to get into bodywork, start with Masterson. Because there's such a power in observing. And I think too, like having, we're trying to help people with their horses and help the horses. You guys may have said this before, but it goes along with this all, I think, talking about having clear expectations and goals and having some clarity about that. Like what you're saying, Deb, if you're trying to manifest something.
Yeah. What is it? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Horse, like the more clear you are,
and the more specific, the more detailed it is. The more available the feedback will be, because now you have more like there's more to be shown when you're looking at a more microscopic level of things.
Mm-hmm.
The Tamara, the idea of like clinic hopping, like I think like a role in that goes back to the conversation you had with Jessica. Is that like an idea of being like accepting where you're at with something too? Because I just like I think a lot of times that like constant jumping from this idea to this idea to this idea, I think sometimes it can be really difficult to just be where you're at with something, and it might not be that it's wrong, but it like being able to spend time where you're at and really flesh it out, I think is an important part of knowing, do I give this thing a little longer, or is this when I pull the plug on it? Like I do think that understanding of yourself and just being like, well, am I just itching for something that I'm not clear on, or like is this really the end of the line on this idea or this technique?
Yeah, like seeking betterment is amazing. We should
Yeah.
all do it. But if you're seeking betterment because something is
Yeah.
so wrong,
Yep. Or another question to ask is like, is this not going well because I'm not good at it yet? And then if I spend a little time on it and get better, does this start to become what I'm looking for? And I think that applies to the body work too, right, Vanessa? Like where like you have to develop a technique that you're doing. It's not just magically going to work the first. You have to hit the right spot and have the right feel behind it and have the right intention behind it.
And with anything you're doing manual therapy wise, at first you're really in your head. You're really like, okay, this needs to be here and this da da da, and then the feel does kind of come later. And yeah, you just got to practice to become proficient. And feel is something. Some people have incredible feel; they're just born with it. But most of the time, in my opinion, it's just the time in practicing experience. You can be as good as someone who's very gifted at a particular skill if you just put the time in.
Yep.
Yeah.
And like as far as like the horses getting better goes, all I'm looking for in subsequent sessions is an improvement.
Yeah.
It can be very teeny tiny, but an improvement. And a lot of times what I hear people saying, like owners, clients, and their feedback to me, the things that they notice about the horse is their attitude, or they're more relaxed. Or one lady, I just love her to pieces. She's like, "You made my horse smarter." I'm like, "What?" She goes, "Well, he's not as spooky when we go across this bridge, and he's just like, less. He's just smarter about how he's moving and what." His like what's coming up for him, and he had a lot of cranial stuff, and that stuff makes a horse crazy, makes a person crazy too. Yeah. So, anyways, you can't make people smarter though.
I was like, maybe I need to go visit Vanessa. I think like another thing that happens as people are like exploring an idea, or I'll maybe phrase this as like I'm me specifically working with a horse, and I have this thing I'm trying to help with or redirect, or a behavior I'm trying to change. And I'm doing something and I'm seeing like slow progress, like you're saying, that incremental progress. And each day things are getting like a little bit better and a little bit better. But like it's getting better, but it doesn't feel like we're approaching a resolution. And I think of that as like approaching a singularity. You spin around it, and you're getting closer, but you're never going to actually get there because the distance in what you're doing between where you're at and where you want to be is infinite. And so I do try, like in my work, to realize when I'm on that track, and that's usually when I'll decide to shift and try something different. Like if it just feels like the progress is something but not resolving, I'll try something different to see if like I just missed like a specific thing that can help us get to the resolution versus just always gradually getting better.
And I
Um,
mean, do you guys come to this point as trainers? Like I know I do with what I do. Like sometimes you just hit a limitation. Like
yeah,
the horse is just not suited for what
yeah,
you want to do, owner. And I feel like that's hard too,
yeah.
especially in this climate.
That was a thing I had to work on this past year because I had a couple of horses where, like, I felt like I was spinning around that singularity and not really getting to a resolution. And I had to either accept one of two possibilities: that my skill set just wasn't where it was needed to be to help this horse get across the line with something, or the horse was not capable of it.
And I think that happens so much.
Yeah,
Like you're humble enough to where you're going, maybe it was me or maybe I need to try something different. But I just feel like in general, many expectations that get put on horses are unfair in that they have hit the end of
yep,
their capacity to do whatever whoever is asking of them.
yep,
And that's a real thing. I mean, I see it all the time in the body work. You say, I suspect your horse has structural damage
yep,
from either a trauma or an injury or repetitive trauma, the way that they're being ridden or have been ridden over years. And now this particular joint and they're trashed.
yep,
Like I see that a lot. These older horses that people still want to go run barrels on at 25. And you're like, this horse has structural damage. They're done. And it's also trying to say that in a way that lands
yep,
well, right? Which is the other hard part of what we do. But we're just being honest and authentic when we say those things. Your horse has these limitations, and we may have to
yep.
alter our expectations.
And going back to the idea of like the horse owner or the client being realistic, at some point we have to also say, what are my limitations? Am I physically able to help this horse with what's going on? Am I at the place where I can put the time and resources necessary to help this? And sometimes the answer to that's no, and that's okay. Like that's an okay place to be. Getting to that acceptance of it allows the horse to have a happier, healthier outcome. It allows us to have a happier, healthier outcome, versus trying to just kind of keep forcing through something where everybody's unhappy.
I think it's easy to try to not be rude and hurt feelings and indirectly say this horse is done. And I think that it would be very easy to say, well, I just want to get the point across without shutting them out. I don't want them to turn and leave. I want them to hear me. But I also think that leads us, I mean, I've been there I know what this can be like, Deb, when you have a training barn and you've got people there week in, week out, you're trying to not offend, but be honest. But at the end of the day, sometimes I think it would be better to offend and get it over with.
I think
do what I know I have historically done, which is like, okay, just meet them where they're at. Just try to meet them where they're at, as we should. I'm not saying we shouldn't do that. We should try to meet them where they're at. However, I think that sometimes prolongs this thing and ends up building up this resentment against each other where I'm like, why aren't you seeing this yet? Why don't you get it yet? And they're like, why haven't you fixed this yet? Why isn't this working yet?
Yeah, and I think I think there's kindness and clarity, right? We don't necessarily have to be nice. We just need to be kind, and kind's just how we see the situation right now, how we understand it. We just have to be able to communicate that. It's like trying to get it to land well. I think there's a balance to walk there of like, as educators, we have a responsibility in the way we say things, right? To people, to horses, like it's our responsibility to say it in a kind and clear way. But it is also the responsibility of the person on the other side to receive it in an authentic way. And that we don't have control over. And so you just say it. It's not something you can control. It's not. So no need to sugarcoat it. We can just be clear. We can say it. We can offer options. Like we don't have to just leave them out in the dust on their own. But we don't have control over that part of it. We have control over how we say it and our authenticity behind it, like in the integrity behind the statement. But that's it.
Yeah.
I like that. The authenticity, integrity kind of feel vibe that we wanted for this conversation.
One of the things I noted was talking about incremental progress. It probably is still just proving my point that you have to invest a certain amount of time in something to really have a whole lot of opinion on it. But it was like, it's easy for us as trainers because we've been to, we'll call it steps 1 through 5. We've been to step 5 so many times that you can really easily see that happening in step 2.
Oh, I like how you're wording that.
But when you're that person who's just learning step 1 and 2 and you've never been to step 5, it's really hard to see and believe. And then it turns into, well, who's saying it the loudest or the prettiest on the internet or the whatever.
I love how you worded that. The way I've always thought of it, because that idea comes up a lot when you're working with feel, right? This idea of like providing feel in your work with the horses. It can like when you're first starting, it's like you're trying to channel the force, like a Jedi mind trick. But it's not that. It is a technique. It is a thing. It's a palpable thing. But it can just seem impossible. But then it happens. And you know, it might happen for a brief moment, just really short. But it happened. And so now you know it's real. So the impossible thing just happened. But it's gone. But you think it came from over there. So you can start walking that direction toward it. And then you walk that way, and then it happens again. And you're like, oh, and it happens a little longer. And you're like, all right, this was what I was looking for, but it's gone again. But I think it came from that way. You start walking that way. And so each time you stumble across it, you hone in on it, and you get closer, and it seems more and more possible. It starts happening more and more frequently. Then eventually you get there and you get it. But those first steps where you're just kind of in the dark and you have no idea what way to go and where it is, like that's a really difficult place to be.
It is, and that is what makes it so easy to clinicop, right?
Yes, yeah, because it's like, well, this isn't. I'm in a dark room, yeah.
Because you. I think it came from over there.
Yeah.
I think I'm going the wrong way. I'm going over
there.
You're probably in there, so.
But it's such a personal journey, is the thing. People can guide you. They can provide a voice in the dark to pull you toward it, but it is you're taking the steps. You're experiencing when you stumble upon it, and it's like the louder the outside voice is, the harder it is to find it yourself, to be aware when you actually do stumble, because it's so subtle, some of this stuff. Like the change is so small that if you got all this noise, you're just not going to hear it, even though you've maybe stumbled across it multiple times.
There's often way too much noise, and sometimes you desperately need to hear that person. What?
Yeah.
Oh, thank God I heard that. I would have gone this way.
Yeah.
Definitely, Patrick King. Shout out to Patrick King.
Yeah.
Person for me in time or two. I'm getting lost in the ocean over here.
Yeah.
Well, it's easy to get lost in this social media climate too.
Yeah.
And I just recently, there was this post that went around and it just created a huge storm, this particular thing that, anyways,
Are you talking about worms?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's all I need to know.
People reach out to me and be like, what do you think about this? And I'm like,
yeah.
I mean, it's a thing. It's a thing. But the way it was presented online by that particular person was dangerous, in my opinion. Anyways, my good friend and a mentor to me in many ways, I talked to her yesterday, and she goes, Vanessa, you're the real deal. And I'm like, no, I'm not. Yes, you are. You're the real deal. And you just got to stand in your truth.
Yeah.
all these people are going to make all this noise and they're going to create these followers, and you're helping horses. You've got great clients. You're networked with fantastic people. Stand in your truth and believe in that. And
Yeah.
that's all you got to do. And I was like, I needed to hear that.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. It's awesome to have someone like that in your corner too.
Yeah. Thanks,
Yeah.
Maria. I like Maria.
Yes. And I think awesome to have someone like that in your corner, and everyone has to remember, like, we can be that for ourselves. Like,
Yeah.
you can be a
Yeah.
non-professional.
Yeah. I love that.
You can be that for your horse. Like, it's okay to feel lost. It's fine.
No.
It's okay to be frustrated by this, that, or the other, or what everybody else is doing. But it does all come back to ask your horse, see what they have to say about it.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of, I feel like, what your friend was saying, Vanessa. Is like, ask the horses. Everybody
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Right. And you know, people know, I'm going to say this. I think people know their horses on such an intimate level, and that's where horse owners can get really tossed around too. Like, you know, and at the end of the day, like, and you know this, Tamara, just with Barnaby, like and we talked about this, like you had a gut intuition that something wasn't right, and you know you vetted it and nothing really, you know, came up, but you knew there's something wasn't right, and at the end of the day you were right. There was, you know, and so you as even a horse owner, sometimes, like, just really, just, you know, your horse. Some clients I have observed their horses like crazy, and I'm like, oh my god, how do you have the time or wherewithal to do that? But they know their horses better than anybody, and so, and they need to kind of stand in that too. And
Yeah.
I love what you said, just, and even what you said earlier, Deb, the horse, that's your feedback right there, like that's your truth
Yeah.
barometer right there.
Yeah. I like to go along with that. Like I think it's really important. I think that people are validated in that when they have an experience with their horse. Of course, they know their horse the best, right? And then what I'll sometimes think is, well, there might be, like, their information is valid, and then we may be interpreting it a different way. And so in that work, what I try to do is offer my interpretation of it and say, yeah, I agree. I see this evidence. What if it's this? And then what if we try this and see if it's better? And I think that way it's not me telling them what to do. It's us having like an interaction, but then also helping them kind of explore it themselves and getting empowered to try different things and then see the outcome. And be, I think that empowerment is really important for people, to not just be told what to do, but to take, yeah, I can do something about this. I can have direction in this.
Dev, do you find, let's say you have someone that found you via Hunter Jumper Land, like they saw you at the horse show, they've been in a more traditional Hunter Jumper barn, and they want to come to your barn. Do you feel like you have to teach that person how to listen to their horse, or how to be the one that knows their horse best?
I do. Yeah, I think that is a majority of the cases. Not all the time. Not all the time. But I do think there are certain programs where they don't actually spend a lot of time with the horse. And so they aren't the most knowledgeable person about that horse.
When Vanessa was saying, "Oh, my clients know their horse best," I'm like, "You're actually quite lucky, because
Yeah.
I don't, if you look at the whole horse universe,
Yeah.
I don't actually think that's all that common.
Yeah.
Certainly,
yeah.
if we look at the competitive world, I feel like that's actually, sadly, not that common.
Yeah.
Well, the clientele I have is, I think, kind of unique in that way. For the most part, like, I've just got to this point where really the people that are coming to me now, they're tuned into their horse. They want to help their horse. And I do think that's different from what you're talking about. And you guys model that to people, though. That's the cool thing about the role you guys are in, is that you model how to interact with your horse, how to read your horse. And I can see totally how, if you're just, mechanically, like, we're going to jump, we're going to dressage, we're da-da-da-da-da-da, there's a lot of missing pieces there, just in that basic connection. and you guys are there to kind of be the example to people of how this
Yeah.
works in a
The-
more authentic way.
Yeah. and also, Vanessa, your data set might be kind of skewed because you're working with people that have reached out to you, right? Like,
True.
versus like having a trainer call you and say, come work on these 10 horses at my barn. I imagine like a lot of your clientele's individuals saying, can you come to this barn and work on this horse?
Majority is, you're exactly, and
Yeah.
they've maybe they either like just want to make their horse feel good,
Yeah.
or they've been through a bunch of things, vets, body workers, whatever, and trying to figure out what's going on with their horse. So
Yeah.
it is skewed. You're right.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Now, I know I'm not the only trainer you had that would set up a group of horses and have you come. So tell me that. What is the theme?
Because you were the trainer, and because you also attracted these people that wanted a more authentic connection with their horse. And so then all these horses I had put in front of me already kind of knew the language, and the intentions were there from you and the owners to just want to figure out what's going on, make their horse feel better. There wasn't, a lot of like, or smoke and mirrors. It was pure. It was like it's because of you, because you were that trainer, and so you set up these horses, and it was all following in how you are and relate to horses anyways.
So I definitely wasn't trying to set you up to say that, but thank you. But my question more is, like, I know you have a couple other trainers that you have done this for. not the only one. So
they're not so focused on their performance aspect of it that it's not it's about the connection with the horse and not degrading the horse. Mm-hmm. Like those are the people I work with. Like that's why I don't get called to Scottsdale to go work at your typical
so horsemanship trainers. Not you've been helping horsemanship trainers.
And not to say those guys are doing a bad job, but I'm just saying I'm not connected with the uber professional horse trainers. I the ones that I do, a couple up in Scottsdale, they're kind of cast a little bit as being unique and different because they're not doing the conventional. Let's start the 2-year-olds and get them doing sliding stops and da 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 da. And I'm just like so thrilled about that.
Thank you for listening. If you can, please rate or review the show, subscribe, comment, share with a friend. We also really appreciate your participation on social media. Anything you may be called to do will help us reach new listeners and help the style of horsemanship to flourish. Until next time, happy horsing.